Okay, folks, this is a brief, hopefully, video tutorial for the creation and workflow of your poem painting grid composition. So this will be maybe helpful, especially if you missed class this past week. But starting out, just creating your composition, we're going to work on a 16 by 12 composition. So go to File, New. We're going to set it up in inches. You can make it either a horizontal orientated composition or vertical. So 16 by 12, 150 pixels per inch. That's important there, or else you're going to have a tiny pixelated image. RGB 8-bit color mode, right? You can name it now or later on. So as that computes. Getting started on this, you want to divide your composition into at least six equal panels, equally sized panels. You're going to break down your poem in whatever way you see fit, by stanza, by strong images in the poem that you want to communicate. But basically, we're creating 6 or more separate, distinct compositions that will be fitted together in this larger multi-panel composition. To actually divide up the composition into panels, we're going to use the ruler option for our composition, which you can see in front of you, and guidelines. The ruler, if you don't see the rulers on the borders of your composition window, just go into View, and a little bit further than midway down, you'll see the rulers if they're off, turn them on. And it probably will automatically come up in inches. But if you right-click on the ruler itself, you can change the measurement into pixels, inches. Percent's pretty good. For our purposes, percent might be the best because we're going to be dividing our composition up into 6 parts, so into thirds across and into halves up and down. So now I'm going to bring in some guidelines, and these are easy to play with. You can be in any tool, or can you? Yeah, and just click the left mouse button on the ruler, and then just drag. And you'll see that you're dragging a line across. I'm going to drag my first guideline to like 33 and a third%, right? A third of the way across. And you can see this light blue line. This will not appear in a print or in an exported like JPEG file or anything. This is only like a measuring tool, a measuring aid. So I'm going to drag my second guy to 66.6. That's about a third of the way. It doesn't have to be exact, but we're trying to get it more or less exact. There are more exact ways you can do it. Feel free to be exacting. Now I'm just going to drag a horizontal line down to 50%. So now I have 6 equal compositions, and I want to save my project often. So Photoshop file type, obviously. And so now I can work. I'm going to ask you guys to use like whatever combination of imagery and painting tools and things like that you want. Use multiple layers. Play with layers. Try to keep things separate. If you want to separate a piece of an image out from another piece of an image, select it and then cut and paste, and it will become its own layer. Of course, this will get complicated pretty fast working with layers. So it's all about keeping yourself organized, possibly naming your layers. And I'll get a little bit more into how to keep the layers organized in a minute. First off, use a little bit of paintbrush tool. I can start off interpreting my poem there. Another tool that you might want to use for this is the what is it called? The shape tool. I always forget the name of it. There's a rectangle tool, sort of custom shape tool, or on the keyboard, the hotkey is the letter U. You can draw lots of sort of basic geometric shapes. If you want to work entirely abstract, that is your option. I actually encourage that. That could be fun. Think like a painter for this project. If you're using the custom shape tool, just make sure that you are drawing. In your version of Photoshop, it's going to look a little different, but in the tool properties area in Creative Cloud Photoshop, there's a drop-down menu that says you're either drawing in vector, in shape, or in pixels, and you want to make sure that you're drawing in pixels today. So there's path, shape, or pixels. You want pixels because in the others you can't go back in and erase them like that. We want to be able to just manipulate whatever we draw with our standard, eraser, paintbrush, transform tools. So here we have this. If you want to use a combination of images and your own hand-drawn stuff, fine. This is the easiest way to drag it in. Just drag it into the Photoshop icon on the dock, and it should come up as its own window. So that's kind of my preferred way to do it. You start off with this thing appearing as its own, as its own window on the screen. You can edit it in the window or just drag it on over. And here we are. Remember that if you want to transform your layer, you don't have to select anything. You can transform the whole layer by going up to Edit, Transform, Scale, Rotate, blah, blah, blah. Or you can just click, when you're in the Move tool, click on the Show Transform Controls up at the top. And these little handles appear. And if you want to scale things in perspective, hold down Shift, because you don't necessarily want a squash lemur. And then you can either double-click or click on another tool to apply the transformation. It looks very pixelated, but when I double-click on this, you see that it actually retains a little bit more of the quality. Okay, so then play with your layers. Okay. Now, eventually you're going to get to the point. You're playing with these layers, you're cutting them out, you get the composition you want, but you might have stuff kind of bleeding over the edge. So here's a chance for you to use one of the methods that I'm going to require for this exercise that you employ. Now you could, if you wanted to, you want these to be 6 separate compositions, right? So you want each to be its own complete composition. We don't want things bleeding over from one panel into the next. I think that's really important for this assignment. Keep them separate. They should have some kind of continuity between them, by using the same colors, some of the same shapes. You can repeat imagery to give a kind of feeling of continuity or flow. But please think about these as if they are 6 separate self-contained compositions. And so to deal with this overflow of the image, I could easily, just start erasing it down over here. Of course, I have to have the layer selected that I want to edit. Or I could even do something as easy as, selecting this and then saying delete. But for this assignment, I want to actually require you guys to try out the layer mask. Now, creating a layer mask is easy. You just make a selection, select whatever you want to remain visible, and then you click the layer mask, and it cuts off anything that's around, not included in your selection. You can see over to the right that there's a kind of black and white image that shows what part of the layer is visible and what part is invisible. You can actually affect what is revealed and what is hidden by using the paintbrush or eraser tools when you've been careful to select the actual mask itself rather than the layer image. You can see how the layer is now highlighted. I'm affecting the layer, drawing on the layer, but when I highlight the mask, I'm actually changing, oops, let's actually make this more clear what's going on here. I'm actually changing what is visible or what is invisible. Let's turn that off. Okay, you can see that I'm making the lemur visible, and influencing the drawing of this mask area. And if I erase parts, that's one thing that might trip you up. If you want to change the shape of the mask, make sure you're painting in black. And erasing, so that's erasing. Now painting will cover up the image. And you can see how the mask is affected over there on the right side. And you can always disable the layer mask and just retain whatever you have. This is something that they call non-destructive. So you can always undo it. So play around with the layer mask. Use it for at least one of your panels. Preferably use it for all of them. Now if you have multiple layers in this panel, and you have a lot of stuff bleeding over the edge, how do you actually mask them all out together? Well, this question is the answer to this question is related to the question of how do I group my layers together in order to move them all at once, or just keep them organized. And a good way to do that is by creating a layer group. Now, you might have noticed by now that you can select multiple layers by holding down Shift or the Command key. So if you want to group a couple things together, just select what you want in the group, and down here, create new group. You have your group created. If you have the entire group selected, you can actually do things to edit the entire group. I think I didn't get my group, sorry. Well, if you have a group and you want to add more things into it, you can always just drag new items in. So now these are my group, and I can actually turn that arrow down to take a look at and edit the individual layers. So now with my group edit highlighted, I can move the two layers together, or I could still just move, one at a time. And you can affect things. You can scale them together and all that kind of cool stuff. Okay. So the other important aspect here is once I've grouped the layers in my panel together, I can actually mask them together too. So I have my group selected. I'm going to, I should just include my entire composition here. I'm going to highlight my entire panel and then create a layer mask. And here I am with my multiple layers masked to fit within the panel. There's one, this can get pretty confusing if you're working on multiple panels on this multi-panel composition board. It might become too confusing, and some people actually prefer to work on each panel individually and then move them onto the multi-panel board. Now, an easy way to create a separate file that's only the size of one of these compositions. The way that I just do it very quickly, you can kind of try to count how many pixels each of these panels is. But what I do is just highlight the whole panel. One side note is that you'll notice that if you have view snap turned on, when your selection gets close to the guides, it'll just snap, it'll attach itself to the guide, so you know that you're exactly the size of, from the edges to that guideline there. So snap helps in this case. And so now I'm just gonna say edit, copy, and I've basically copied. I might want to go into background to do this. It might not matter though. And once I copy, get something in my clipboard of this size, and then create a new. Did it do it? Yeah. And then create a new document. It automatically will size the new document's dimensions to whatever I have in my clipboard, whatever I've copied. So now I say OK, and you notice that it's actually the perfect size of one of my panels. And so you can kind of play with this, blah, 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 you know, make some new layers. I wonder if it gave me a grayscale though. Yeah, for some reason it brought this dude over in grayscale, so I know why, but it's unimportant. You want to make sure you're still working in color, so whatever. It's unimportant why that happened. But I'll tell you, it's because I was actually cutting that selection over from the mask, the layer mask. Okay, anyway, when I get done working on my individual layer, and make sure to save this too as a separate file, like panel 1. When I get done with my individual panel, I can create a group out of these layers and bring them over in the same way. Now you can't put a locked background layer in a group, so I'm just going to unlock that guy. I'm going to do it like that, and I'm going to select both of them, group them, bring the group over. Once again, in your version of Photoshop, when you create a group and you have things highlighted, they'll automatically go into the group. In this version of Photoshop, they don't do that yet. So drag them into the group. They're in the group. Now you can bring them over. And they should appear. And where are we? Where's my group? Your group is here somewhere. Oh. Oh, I see. They dragged over. They dragged over, and things will always be confusing at a certain point. But they have gotten dragged into my other group. So if you just drag them, you can drag them out of the group. You see how easy it is to like drag your layers up and down, inside and outside of groups. Forgive the confusing appearance of my layers. But anyway, you can have your second panel done. And if snap is turned on, it should snap right into place between those guys. So that's an easy way to do it. And then when you have your 6 or more panels done, you know, just save your file with all the layers. Don't flatten things down. It's going to be a pretty large file by the end. So save it onto your thumb drive. You're probably not going to be able to email it to yourself at that stage. I think that's everything that we're covering. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to email.